Sak Yant is often misunderstood the moment people see it. To many, it appears as nothing more than a sacred tattoo, ancient symbols etched into skin, lines of geometry, scripts, figures of animals or deities. It is photographed, admired, copied, and displayed. But Sak Yant was never meant to be decoration. It was never meant to be fashion, and it was never meant to be approached casually. Sak Yant is a living yantra, one that is permanently bound to the human body. To understand Sak Yant properly, we must look beyond modern tattoo culture and return to its roots. Sak Yant emerged from ancient systems of yantra science carried through Indic, Khmer, and Thai esoteric lineages. These traditions were not concerned with belief or superstition. They were concerned with structure, how consciousness, intention, geometry, sound, discipline, and timing interact to shape reality. In its original form, Sak Yant was not given freely. It was conferred selectively, often to warriors, guardians, ascetics, or individuals under strict ethical codes. The tattoo itself was never considered the source of power. The power came from alignment between the yantra, the individual, and the discipline required to sustain that energy. Because Sak Yant does not create energy, it amplifies energy. This is the most important principle to understand. Every yantra is a form of geometric intelligence. Each pattern resonates with specific energetic currents. Some stabilize, some protect, some attract, some sharpen aggression, some strengthen identity, others dissolve it. When such a pattern is permanently tattooed onto the body, it becomes part of the person's energetic circuitry. Like fuel entering an engine, it does not decide where the engine goes, it only increases power. And this is where many people misunderstand Sak Yant. There is a popular belief that Sak Yant changes fate or brings good luck, but Sak Yant does not override who you are. It amplifies who you already are, especially the parts you are least conscious of. If a person carries unresolved anger, certain protective or warrior yantras can intensify that anger. Not always as obvious rage, but as impulsive behavior, confrontations, loss of restraint, or poor judgment. Under certain celestial configurations, this amplification can become overwhelming. A person may act in ways they normally would not. They may make choices that feel justified in the moment, but destructive in outcome, financially, relationally, or karmically. This is not because the yantra is harmful. It is because power was introduced into an unstable system. To understand this clearly, it helps to look at specific Sak Yant designs. One of the most well-known is the Gao Yord, 9 spires yantra, often regarded as a master structure associated with protection, authority, and spiritual hierarchy. Traditionally, this yantra was given to individuals who carried responsibility leaders, warriors, monks, or those under strong discipline. When aligned with someone grounded and self-aware, it creates a stabilizing field. It reinforces presence, resilience, and a form of energetic sovereignty that repels interference. But when tattooed on someone driven by ego or insecurity, the same yantra can amplify dominance and rigidity. Instead of calm authority, it may strengthen pride or a false sense of invincibility. Such individuals may feel protected while unconsciously making reckless decisions, believing they are untouchable. In this case, the yantra does not prevent downfall, it accelerates it. Another widely known design is the 5 lines yantra, often misunderstood as gentle or universally safe. It is associated with blessings, attraction, fortune, and karmic redirection. When aligned with someone emotionally balanced and ethically grounded, it can soften life's friction, draw supportive circumstances, and gently realign momentum. But when tattooed on someone seeking shortcuts or external validation, it can create dependency. Instead of cultivating awareness, the person begins relying on the yantra to fix life. When reality does not comply, frustration and confusion arise. The yantra amplifies intention, not entitlement. Then there are warrior yantras such as tiger designs, which harness assertive and predatory energies. Historically, these were reserved for fighters and protectors, those whose survival depended on courage and dominance. For individuals in professions like security or law enforcement, such energies can sharpen instinct and decisiveness under threat. But for someone with unresolved anger or insecurity, these yantras can be dangerous. They may intensify aggression, impatience, and power struggles. Under certain constellations, this energy can become uncontrollable, leading to impulsive actions, broken relationships, legal trouble, or financial collapse. The energy does not teach restraint, it removes it. There are also 8 or 10 directional yantras associated with protection from all sides, often sought by those who travel or live exposed lives. When used correctly, they can provide a sense of grounded movement and situational awareness. But when misunderstood, they can create a false sense of immunity. Some become less cautious, assuming protection is guaranteed. The yantra guards direction, it does not replace wisdom. Beyond these are higher yantras associated with intelligence, insight, and subtle perception. These do not create dramatic outer changes. They quietly recalibrate awareness. People carrying them may feel drawn toward learning, introspection, and inner refinement rather than ambition or status. But these yantras can be unsettling for those unprepared. They may trigger questioning, emotional withdrawal, or disinterest in material pursuits. For someone deeply attached to external success, this can feel like loss rather than growth. The yantra is not harming them, it is dissolving illusions faster than they can integrate. Sak Yant does not make you spiritual, it makes you more of what you are. This is why not everyone should receive a Sak Yant. And this is also why many people experience unexpected difficulties after receiving one confusion, instability, heightened emotional states, or life situations becoming more intense rather than smoother. Another layer that is rarely discussed is that yantras do not exist in isolation. They respond to timing, environment, and celestial movement. As constellations shift, certain energetic frequencies rise and fall. A yantra that feels dormant for years may suddenly activate strongly under specific conditions. This is why traditional lineages emphasized restraint. One yantra, properly chosen, properly activated, and properly maintained, was considered sufficient. Multiple yantras tattooed indiscriminately can create energetic interference, conflicting currents pulling the system in different directions. For a highly aware practitioner, this may be manageable. For the average person, it can be destabilizing. More does not mean safer. More does not mean stronger. In fact, overwhelming energetic input in an unconscious system often leads to poorer judgment, reduced mindfulness, and greater susceptibility to downfall. There are Sak Yant designs that are more neutral in nature, often associated with attraction, charisma, or social harmony. These yantras work by drawing supportive conditions rather than forcing outcomes. People may find that others respond more kindly, opportunities arise more easily, or relationships soften. Wealth, when it comes, often arrives indirectly through trust, goodwill, and cooperation rather than domination. These yantras tend to be more suitable for lay people, but even then, intention and self-awareness matter. What must also be said honestly is that not all sakyant masters will tell you these distinctions. Many will not assess suitability. Many will not ask about your temperament, awareness, or discipline. Some will simply apply whatever is requested, as long as payment is made. This does not mean Sak Yant is false. It means responsibility has shifted from lineage to consumer. Traditionally, the master bore karmic responsibility for what was given. Today, that responsibility often rests entirely on the recipient, who may not understand what they are carrying. Sak Yant is not a charm. It is a commitment to self-awareness, a commitment to restraint, a commitment to understanding that power without consciousness does not protect, it exposes. For most people, especially those early on the path, temporary yantras drawn, worn, meditated upon are far safer than permanent ones. They allow learning without irreversible amplification. They allow alignment without overload. A body marked with many yantras does not mean a person is protected. Often, it means they are carrying forces they do not fully understand. True protection comes from awareness. True stability comes from coherence. Yantras, when used correctly, support this. When used carelessly, they magnify what is unresolved. Sakyant is ancient technology. Like all powerful tools, it demands respect, discernment, and humility. It is not for everyone, and it was never meant to be. Understanding this is not rejection of tradition. It is honoring it. And perhaps the most important truth is this: when energy stabilizes within, reality changes naturally. No symbol can replace that work. But when the inner system is ready, the right yantra does not force destiny, it aligns it. That alignment is quiet, and it is powerful. Sak Yant does give power, but power is not one thing. Some yantras amplify what already exists, intensifying drive, protection, or force. Others work more subtly, altering trajectory rather than volume, quietly redirecting the path a life takes over time. This is why the choice of yantra matters deeply. When chosen with awareness, the right yantra supports alignment and growth. When chosen blindly, it can strengthen the very patterns a person is trying to escape. In the end, Sak Yant does not decide who you become. It responds to who you already are, and when awareness is present, power becomes guidance. Without it, power simply becomes exposure. If you enjoy topics like this, subscribe to our channel and let us know what other subjects in esoteric and occult knowledge you'd like us to explore. Share your thoughts in the comments, and the topic with the most likes will be prioritized for our next video.